So I saw this resume and I saw this post where someone was asking for help and people were praising not just his resume, but his portfolio site and his LinkedIn profile. One person even saying, and I quote, "You are like the wet dream of every aspiring web developer and you're struggling?" Now, he mentioned he applied to over 1,500 employers, but only received 2 interviews. Now, he was kind enough to agree to let me kind of review his stuff, but show it to everyone so they can possibly learn from this, get some ideas, or maybe even fix some of their stuff. Now, I'm going to show you this stuff first before I add any commentary whatsoever, so you can get an opinion on what you think is going right, wrong, in between, whatever. But remember, he applied to 1,500 places and he's only received 2 interviews within that entire time period. Now, this is his portfolio site, right? Really great animation. Obviously, this is the mobile view because I'm just recording this way. Great animations happening here, right? You see some kind of information here. See my work, which would just take you down here. Then, of course, the resume, which we're already reviewing. Then you see his projects, right? And then you scroll down here. You see his digital toolbox of the tools that he knows. You get in touch, send me a message, see my GitHub, and find me on LinkedIn, right? Great menu over here with, links right there. Really visually appealing. I scroll through, I'll refresh one more time so we can kind of see it in action. All right, now you got an idea what that looks like. Now here's the resume. The resume is 2 pages long. I've redacted some of his personal information just, for privacy and things like that. But this is the first page of the resume. We have the technical skills section, work experience, projects at the bottom. Then you scroll down to the second page and you have the education, your certification, volunteer experience. And if you want to read this in detail, you can pause this to, kind of go in further. So now you've seen the portfolio site and the resume. So my question to you right now is, what do you think about this? Think about this for a moment before I say anything at all. Well, the way that everyone was praising it, it seemed like this was a perfect fit for any organization. But the reality is it lacks so much substance, so much value, so many bullet points. I'm here, I read the entire thing because I want to help this person out, right? I don't even know what their capabilities are based off of this resume. A lot needs to be redone. We're missing the whole point of this in a tremendous way. And the reality is a lot of beginners do the exact same thing. And I'm trying to get you all to move past this. Your portfolio site misses the entire point of what a portfolio site is supposed to be. Visually, this thing is amazing. From a developer perspective, it is incredible what you've done at this point, right? There's a lot of code that went into this, a lot of animations. It looks incredible. Think about who the very first and second line of hiring is. It is a recruiter. It is someone in HR. It is, someone not coming from a technical capacity that can appreciate how much technical work went into this. If they're going to your portfolio site, they're going there with one very specific reason. It is to learn more about who you are and your capabilities. Your portfolio site misses the mark on that. And let me explain why, because I don't think you necessarily realize that. Your portfolio site is not a place that is just existing for you to post your projects on there. And I know a lot of y'all think that's what it is, but that is not the purpose. The purpose of your portfolio site is supposed to be a place where you're giving them extra information and guiding them and controlling the path on the way to your work. But the reality is no one owes you the time to check out every single one of your projects. They don't owe you the time to check out your projects. You have to create a value add for them to want to check these things out. If you're not doing that, they're not going to check it out. So by you just having a photo of your project and a name on it, that does nothing to incentivize them to actually click on the thing. There's no case study. There's no information. I don't know what this project even does except for the thumbnail that I see. There's no incentive for me to check that out. The other thing is you have this entire section that is dedicated to your about me, right? Which is great. And it gives some basic description of who you are. But where's the information on the problems that you've solved, the volunteer experience that you've had, the way that you've given back to the community? None of that's even there. What if you had a zigzag pattern of images that showcased you at meetups, that showcased you teaching and mentoring and helping others? That would be so much more impactful than just seeing an avatar of your face in the corner with some text on the side that really doesn't do anything to help any hiring manager or anyone in any capacity to know more about who you are. That whole story is missing. How about the fact that in your portfolio, I don't even know that you're a master's degree holder? In this market especially, having a degree is a value add, right? And especially when you're coming from a position of very limited experience, having a degree is definitely going to be a value add. The fact that it's completely buried or hidden even on your resume is wild to me. Now, before I get started, I want to address one thing in particular. I saw many comments stressing one thing in particular, your name. Now, this person is of Indian origin, and they have a name that is, ethnic to that region. I don't necessarily think that should be a concern at all. Do you know how many Indians work in this field? Whether they have sponsorship, visas or not, that should not be your concern here. Your name is not an issue. And anyone saying that is very, very, very closed-minded or speaking from a position of not knowing what they're talking about. Simple as that. Now, I'm not going to say that there's no bias in this industry. There absolutely is, but your name should not be a concern here or something that you should be worried is keeping you from the role. I don't think that's an issue here at all. Resume here. We have your technical skills section. You separate it between expert and experienced in. This is terrible as far as I'm concerned. What if you said that you're an expert in React? By the way, saying you're an expert with such little experience is such a wild statement to me, right? Like you came out of a boot camp, you were an intern, and you did some remote work. I've been in this field for several years now. I'm not an expert in anything, right? But when you say that you're an expert, you now put yourself in a position to where if I ask you a question and you get that question wrong in something that you're a quote unquote expert in, you've now done yourself a massive disservice. What if I need a .NET developer? And let's say because you said you're only experienced in it, I don't know what that means. Did you just follow a YouTube tutorial? Did you do a Udemy course? Did you build a project? I don't know what that means. I don't know if you just built Hello World and threw it in there, right? You haven't given me enough to go off of. So because of that, I already feel uneasy about where your experience level is. I don't know if you have this capabilities to do what I need you to do. As far as I'm concerned, this whole section here is doing yourself a disservice and it's not set up the right way. Now, when it comes to your work experience, I think these bullet points are really missing the mark. Now, when it comes to these bullet points really do not do yourself a really strong service as far as I'm concerned. So to read this, we have constructed e-commerce web application with these various technologies, Pug, GSAP, WebGL, and Webpack for A company and B company, which elevated companies' online presence. How do we know that? And accelerated sales by 10%. How do we know that? What did you do that accelerated the sales by 10%? What specifically did you build that you saw a correlation of increased sales with this company? This point really doesn't work. I'd rather see something along the lines of developed a new e-commerce application using these various technologies that focused on optimizing the sales funnel process from the previous application, which focused on a stronger user experience, leading to fewer abandoned carts, and which resulted in a 10% increase in sales when comparing sales to the previous year. That would explain so much. It talks about what you did, how you approached it. That's a valuable bullet point versus this vagueness. And to be completely honest, this vagueness almost seems like you pull 10% out of nowhere, right? Because here, if I look at the second job experience that you've posted here, developed a backend infrastructure for comprehensive study app utilizing these technologies, resulting in, once again, 10% improvement in learning outcomes. How do we know that? These aren't strong bullet points. To be honest, it's extremely vague. There's no real essence here. You have to understand something when it comes to being a developer. They're not hiring you because you memorized a bunch of syntax. Every single day of the week, somebody's learning how to code for the very first time. Every single day of the week, somebody's coming out of a boot camp. You need to showcase that you're a problem solver. And we're missing that here. Led the development process for web applications, covering everything from requirements analysis to design, implementation, testing, and ongoing maintenance. That's just a bunch of buzzwords. This should be broken down and explained further. And also the fact that this is your most relevant experience, the fact that it's just jumbled together in 2 bullet points, you're missing the mark as far as I'm concerned. I would have broken these down and said something like architected a web app for, I don't know what these companies do, so just, whatever application, from the design phase to deployment of the application that brought in, and just as placeholder values, 10,000 users and resulted in 200,000 revenue, whatever that number is, fill that in the blank. But I would use something like that because now that's a lot more quantitative as well as impactful compared to what is there. You could also say increased overall code coverage by 30% by implementing a test-driven development process utilizing XYZ, whatever, maybe you used Jest or React testing library or whatever it may be, which also increased code quality and saw a reduction of bugs and breaks in the application by over 18%, if that's what that number is, whatever that number is, and the actual number, fill in the blank there. But I would have that there. That's more impactful than what we have here. Now going to the web developer, full stack web developer, it almost seemed like this was a coding bootcamp. So I'm kind of confused by the developed a backend infrastructure for a comprehensive study app. Was that the project that you did? How do you know that it improved 10%? By improving 10%, that kind of means, we're seeing some kind of proof that says that 10% is there. I don't know how you're doing that with this. Instead, I think you could do things like, utilizing AI was able to optimize a process which delivered answers to questions within, a 20% increased speed of response, or reduced site speed from, 1 second per response to, 10 milliseconds or something like that. Those would be quantitative measurements. Or even created database with study, because I don't know what this app does, with study definitions and questions, which resulted in a table of 10,000 entries. Something like that, right? That's missing there. I don't know what the application did. I don't know why you built it. I don't even know what problems you solved in that process of building it. Same thing with the previous job. I don't know what you solved as a problem solver to kind of get these things going. Then you have this job of a front-end development intern. You were intern here, right? So you revamped Odyssey Navigator by migrating web pages from VB Script to JavaScript, resulting in a 20% improvement in page load speed, prolonging the application's life cycle and preserving the original user interface. This is like your strongest bullet point on the entire resume, but I don't necessarily know how this prolonged the application's life cycle. That needs to be explained, but you started out with a point of improvement in page load speed. I would talk more about that. That's such an impactful point. And then you're preserving the user interface and features. I don't necessarily know what that means in this context, right? I can infer some meaning, but I think especially you have to consider who's reading this for the first time. It's a recruiter, someone in HR, etc. They need to know what this means. And so this doesn't really do the biggest justice so far, but that is easily the strongest bullet point on your resume. But the problem is, how much do I have to read and go through that's negative before finally going to a bullet point that's like, okay, this is actually halfway decent. Perform comprehensive software stability testing by systematically evaluating each function. Again, this is just buzzwords, right? Like, it's the same thing as this point over here. It's just buzzwords. None of this is really telling me anything. Let's go to your projects. We have around the world engineered and launched a web application merging Yelp and Instagram functionalities, which has 15 active users. It's great that it has active users, right? What does it do though? Like, what problem is it addressing? Why is your solution accurate for this? None of that's even there. Design the front end of a website using these technologies, implementing highly reusable components, which improved development speed. What did it improve it by? How do we know there was an improvement? When you say you're improving something, there has to be something that showcases that that improvement exists. Otherwise, you are just refactoring or rebuilding with no actual quantitative metrics to showcase the improvement. So that's kind of missing there. Created the backend RESTful web API of the website using these, incorporating WebSocket. Okay, but why did you create the web API? What did it do? You created an API to improve user engagement. How is that a thing? I think API has nothing to do with engagement, but has everything to do with the information that is sharing. And so that right there doesn't really make sense at all in this context. Going to Movius. Every single developer that starts out has a movie-based application. I don't necessarily think that would be something that I'd want to showcase in the resume. If anything, I'd want more explanation of what these projects were, because that's actual real experience that can go a long way. This right here is what gets me, right? You have very limited experience. The fact that you are a master's degree holder is a very large value add, right? Like it's a big value add. Why do I have to get through all those hard to get through bullet points, if I'm being completely honest, and these projects before finding out you have a master's degree? If anything, this is going to be one of your biggest bullet points. This, in my opinion, you should have this probably above your projects, because most of the time I advocate for projects being above education when someone doesn't have an education or they only have a bootcamp experience. Having a master's degree is a massive value add. We should not be burying that. The fact that you have a certification is also a very strong massive value add to prove proficiency in language. I would have that higher as well. It doesn't necessarily make sense to me that we've come all the way down here before and a whole separate page before finding out that you have these really strong points. This needs to be significantly higher up on the list as far as I'm concerned. Volunteer experience. I love volunteer experience. It goes a long way. Let's kind of see what you did here. Contributed to the overhaul of an outdated website to enhance speed, security, functionality. Again, it's the same thing as before. We just jumbled a bunch of stuff without explaining how we did any of this. How did you enhance the speed? What did you specifically do that improved the security? You said you improved functionality. How did you do that? What did you improve? I don't know any of that. Implemented advanced features such as custom fields, posts, and themes using PHP to align with the new website design, while optimizing visibility and boosting search ranking. How did you boost search ranking? How do we know that? What did you boost it by? So you said using effective SEO techniques and best practices. What were some of those techniques? I would describe that. None of that's there. This is such a good amount of volunteer experience with no real value being shared, unfortunately. Developing user-friendly web interfaces for nonprofit organizations to enhance accessibility. How did you enhance accessibility and user experience? Collaborating with cross-functional teams. This is just, ChatGPT kind of focus of a point here to integrate API data seamlessly into. So collaborating with cross-functional teams to integrate API data seamlessly into front-end applications, ensuring reliability. Again, how? You were a coding instructor, cool. Taught coding principles to over 50 students, age 7 to 14, using platform Scratch, leading to, okay, this is cool. Facilitated students in creating, okay. One thing that I'd like to see here is to even showcase like how your instruction helped lead them to graduation or passing the program or something along those lines, right? But this is fine. But I feel like we're missing the mark on these two above, unfortunately. I think the fact that you have had 1,500 applications and only received 2 phone calls back for an interview has everything to do with the fact that you have not done a strong service to yourself by explaining your technical achievements, your problem-solving skills, the things that you've done. I don't know any of that. By going over all your content, I don't have a clue what you've done within any of these roles as far as I'm concerned. I don't know what your problem-solving capabilities are. I don't know what you've executed. Even if I wanted to have a conversation with you, I don't even know what we would talk about right now, or what I would develop some of my conversation, or what I would even develop some questions around, because you haven't given me really enough information to go off of anything. Everything is extremely vague, extremely so. I really hope this entire review helped not just you, the person that I promised that I'd do this review for, but anyone else watching this, because they can walk away fixing their information as well and hopefully avoiding a lot of these mistakes. Please understand what your portfolio site is supposed to do and kind of gauge it as such. Please understand what your portfolio site is supposed to be positioned as, and position yourself in a way that really helps them understand who you are and what your skill set is. It's not a to-do list item that you're just kind of. And also understand your target audience, the very first line of hiring. As a developer, I absolutely admire that portfolio site. As someone who is now from the perspective of someone who's trying to hire, it's cool to have the bells and whistles, but where's the information for me to make a determination on who you are and what you're about? It's not there. I really hope this helped. I understand it seems like there's going to be a lot of work to do here and a lot to fix. I totally get it. But believe me when I say this, you absolutely got this.